been 2 weeks of intense negotiation and politicking here in Paris-Le-Bourget, the venue of the 2015 climate conference. Ministers are trying to reach an agreement on how to keep the global temperature to below 2 degrees centigrade. Today on the program, we'll bring to you all that happened this week. Welcome to EarthFile. I'm Ayola Kasim. As delegates arrived at the Le Bourget conference venue north of Paris on Thursday, they were met by activists calling on negotiators to listen to the voices of people from all around the world.
Stay alive. 1.5 to stay alive. 1.5 to stay alive.
They had recorded the voices of people attending climate rallies ahead of the 2-week summit, which started on the 30th of November.
Our message today was to show the unity of civil society and the most climate vulnerable nations, that in order for countries to express their solidarity with 1.5, they have to be able to deliver that. And what we need from Paris is a really clear pathway of how governments are going to bridge that unacceptable gap between climate catastrophe and some hope of survival for the most vulnerable nations and for future generations.
Summit President Laurent Fabius, who met United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on Wednesday, the 9th of December, said progress had been made, but that a lot of work remained to be done. Talks continued well into the night that Wednesday till the Thursday morning. A string of remaining disputes reflects fundamental disagreements about which countries should shoulder the cost of moving the world to a low-carbon energy system. But there is at least a growing sense that there will be more money for the developing countries least able to give up fossil fuels to build prosperity or most vulnerable to the increased floods, droughts, storms, and rising sea levels that climate change will bring. It is already certain that the national emissions pledges made ahead of Paris will not be able to prevent global temperatures rising past a dangerous threshold of 2 degrees centigrade over pre-industrial times. Inside the conference venue, environmental group Greenpeace's giant polar bear Aurora kept watch over the final days of negotiations.
The bear sends a strong signal to the Paris negotiations here. We need climate action now. We need to switch to renewable energy that could save our future.
The indigenous peoples group said their communities suffer greatly from the effects of climate change and have the right to be recognized in the process.
As indigenous peoples, we have 350,000 square miles of land. So that's more land, that's suffice land, than most of the people in that room. We own it. But we are the people that are not in the room. So something is terribly wrong.
The message has to go out that this is not an economic exercise for states or parties to make money on. You know, it's really the life of our people, and it's up to us to be responsible.
In another protest, Star Wars characters held up a sign saying, "May the 100% clean force be with you," paraphrasing the popular Star Wars quote, "May the force be with you." Jedi Master Yoda told the negotiators,
"Destroy the dark forces and take us to 100% clean." That's the message.
Oxfam said world leaders need to wake up and recognize the climate chaos that will ensue if they fail to secure an ambitious international agreement in Paris. The aid organization dressed protesters up with giant heads and the image of world leaders, including the United States President and the Chinese President, and had them lay down to doze in front of conference hall where the United Nations sponsored talks are taking place. President Obama donned a Stars and Stripes onesie, and the French president a starry eye mask for the protest, which also saw Indian Premier settle down next to German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
And just have a little wiggle.
At this stage, Oxfam is not optimistic about the direction of the talks, but there is still time to make a difference. There is still time for the world leaders to wake up. There is still time for this leadership to be shown. And that's what we're calling on today. This is a great opportunity in Paris to make history and to actually turn the tide on climate change across the world and to have the framework that will get us there.
The aid organization says the stunt has a serious message that leaders need to push for a potentially historic deal. The chairman of the United Nations panel of scientists said global warming has not paused, but more research is needed to understand the level that might cause tipping points or irreversible damage to the Earth's climate system.
There is no hiatus, and the multiple lines of evidence suggest that the Earth is warming very clearly. And for instance, the atmospheric concentrations of the CO2 has been rising, and the sea level has been rising, and the temperature of the ocean was also rising, and there is no hiatus.
In 2013, the panel reported a slowdown or hiatus in warming since about 1998. Despite rising man-made emissions of greenhouse gases, heartening skeptics who said the risks of climate change had been exaggerated. However, more recent research by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has suggested this hiatus is an illusion. But Mr. Lee, attending the United Nations Climate Summit in Paris, said more work was needed based on a number of years of observations to establish a clear understanding of the relationship between carbon emissions and economic growth.
The 2015 data is still preliminary, and we need to wait a couple of months more. And however, if the important point is we need to look at the trend, not just looking at a 1 year data. We need to establish a clear understanding of the relation between carbon emissions and economic growth based upon a number of years of observation of those two data. So we want to wait a few more months and a few more years.
Mr. Lee will oversee the next cycle of reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, whose most recent findings in 2013 and 2014 concluded that global warming meant risks of severe, pervasive, and irreversible impact. He said more study was also needed to understand the importance of tipping points where, for instance, ice melt becomes irreversible.